painful contractions, asking her panic-stricken husband, "Honey, are we there yet?" Or how about the weary Jesus, whipped and beaten and bloody, crawling on hands and knees up to Golgotha, with the weight of the cross on his back, surely asking God, "Are we there yet?" And for young Isaiah, standing in the glory of the Almighty and the Holy of Holies, the answer to that question became very, very self-evident. No, we are not there yet. Isaiah wasn't there yet, and neither was the nation of Judah. Judah may have established itself firmly as a nation under David, but it was clear from the beginning that this holy nation was not the holy nation it had been envisioned by God to be. A combination of bad directions, the lack of a moral compass, and kings who drove Judah into ditch after ditch after ditch had left the nation in a sordid state of affairs. If they had looked at a roadmap, the people of Judah would have discovered that they were, in fact, further away from God than when they began their journey. In fact, they were driving straight toward disaster. You see, the people were not interested in worshiping God. They were just interested in performing empty rituals devoid of meaning. Their hearts weren't holy. How could they be when widows and orphans crying for justice and righteousness sat right outside the temple and were met with scorn and told to keep silent? How could they be holy when nationalism and triumphalism became more important than the command to love God and to love neighbor? You see, folks, Judah hadn't just made a few wrong turns in their journey. No, Judah had forgotten its destination altogether. Judah didn't just need a GPS. They needed someone to remind them of where they were going. And God managed to find the one person stupid enough to be excited for that job. Isaiah. Yes, Isaiah. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, eager to please the yes man. And God looked at Isaiah, and when he looked at him, he saw a man who had his act together. He had a good head on his shoulders. But you know, Isaiah wasn't there yet. Isaiah wasn't a mature man with decades of experience in the ministry. He wasn't a preacher that had several refined sermons ready to go at a moment's notice. He was more like a 15-year-old who just got his learner's permit and was already dreaming about joyriding in Dad's GTO. That's Isaiah. Now, Isaiah may not have had the right credentials, it's true. But when God looked upon Isaiah, God saw that he had the right heart. And that counted for something. He might not have had the tools necessary to repair all the dents and the scuffs, but at the very least, Isaiah couldn't do any worse than the last guy. It's not a perfect situation. It's not a perfect solution. Yeah, God knew that. But then again, Judah isn't a perfect nation. The people of Judah aren't there yet. And so it'll be Isaiah behind the wheel in the meantime. The church, just like the nation of Judah, is on the journey toward holiness. But folks, we're not there yet. We're called to holiness. We're justified by the holiness of Jesus Christ. We've even got a map that leads us to holiness, but somehow we haven't arrived at the place of holiness. And that's because God sets the bar very high. The holiness to which we are called is nothing short, nothing less than love perfected. And for most of us, we're just not there yet. It's no wonder that Wesley took to calling this kind of holiness Christian perfection. And Christian perfection, in a nutshell, is this: when our love of God and neighbor becomes the motivation behind our every word and our every action. And so, can you honestly say that love has been perfected in your heart? For some of you, that might be the case. We might have some real saints here at McDowell. But personally, I know that I'm still a sinner stuck in the meantime. I need a God who is willing to stand with me in my own imperfection and pull me out of the ditch when I veer off the road. Luckily for me, we have a God who's used to working with folks stuck in the meantime. Would be, could be, should be saints, ordinary folks who have made a few wrong turns here and there and have gotten themselves lost. We need a God whose grace can turn us around and point us in the right direction. But you know, folks, we get ourselves in trouble. We get ourselves in trouble when we forget where it is we're going, when we lose sight of our destination. And the church, just like Judah, doesn't struggle because it makes wrong turns. God can deal with wrong turns. The church struggles when it forgets where it's headed. Sometimes the church becomes interested in running programs. Maybe we get so tied up in operating the institution that we forget what lies at the heart of why we gather. We forget the love that brings us together. And so the church becomes consumed by its own activity, becoming so focused on what's happening inside the four walls of the church that we forget about the people outside the walls who are suffering. And so the church is always busy. But you know, folks, we weren't called to a ministry of busyness. We were called to a ministry of holiness. We're called to become so perfected in the love of Jesus Christ that we cannot worship until suffering and injustice are replaced by compassion and peace. And, admittedly, we're not there yet. But you know, God fills in the gaps in the meantime. That's why we gather on Sundays. We are on the path to holiness, but our journey is still in progress. God's grace intercedes in the meantime. Grace that allows us to stand at the foot of the cross, confront the incompleteness of our own journey, and embrace and be embraced by love all the same. And so in the meantime, meet me at the banquet table. Meet me here, my fellow travelers. Meet me at the intersection of incompleteness and abundant grace. Meet me where your best isn't good enough and where God's grace covers all. Because even if you've been wandering aimlessly for years or even decades, if you find your way to this table, you're no longer just a lost traveler. You're a long-awaited guest. Now, this table, it's not going to take away all the dents and the dings in your life. But here's what it will do. It will give you the strength to press onward, to pursue holiness. This table isn't a finish line or a victory circle, but it is an opportunity at a fresh start. This is God's provision of grace poured out for us in the meantime, until we are sanctified by grace.